Kia ora, I'm Simon Hampton. Welcome in to Kiwis Abroad on Sky Sport, where we take an in-depth look at the Kiwi athletes plying their trade around the world. On today's show, Chris Jones from the BBC drops in to run the rule over the Kiwis playing in European Rugby. But before we get to Chris, the US Women's Golf Open took place in Houston, Texas over the weekend. Kiwi Lydia Ko had a solid tournament, finishing in a tie for 13th. She finished 8 shots back, though, after a disappointing final round 5 over par.
Now, Lydia Ko at the 17th for a birdie. Ko has had a run of pars, all pars since the 7th. Can she break it with a birdie? Yes, she can.
And a big test here for Lydia Ko, her third at this par 4.
The downslope will actually help the ball release, which, without much green to work with, hard to make it stop.
Back at 18, Ko, this would be a nice save.
Meanwhile, amateur Amelia Garvey ultimately missed the cut at the US Open, but not by much, and her opening round in particular showed tremendous promise as she mixed with the tournament leaders. Well, shortly after her debut major championship, Amelia Garvey joins me on Kiwis Abroad, and I started by asking her just how it felt to take to the course at a golfing major.
Oh, it was an amazing experience, really. I think it kind of, I ticked off more boxes than I thought I was going to be fair. I kind of went in with no expectations. Obviously, 8 months without competitive golf, I thought I was going to be a little rustier than I was. And, to kickstart my first major with an under par round, it just showed that I have the game to compete with these girls. And then, through 13 holes of the second round, I was, still in contention as well. So it's really good signs, but obviously didn't finish how I wanted to. But there's only learnings and positives to take from this week.
Yeah, I guess when you do have such a strong round and a good performance for the early part of that second round as well, as you mentioned, it does give you that confidence that you do belong on this big stage and that you can compete on this stage down the line.
Yeah, I think it was really a big eye-opener for me. I've always known I have the game, but it just gives you that extra bit of confidence when you actually prove to yourself that you can do it. And, the thing is, I didn't even think I had, I played some really, really solid golf on Thursday, but I didn't even think I had my A game on Friday all day, and just to know that I could still compete, with my B game, I guess it was, really reassuring and gives me a lot of confidence going into, when I turn pro and I'm hopefully going to be out with these girls.
Were you nervous going into this tournament?
Weirdly not. I actually talked to a few people about this. I was more just excited than nervous. And I was, weirdly relaxed going into Thursday, which really helped, I think. I've been doing a lot of work with my mental skills coach being back home in New Zealand. And I've put a lot of effort into that side of the game, seeing as though I've had the time to, and I haven't really been competing much at all. So it was really nice to see, a lot of the skills that I've learned over the past 8 months really, be tested, but also pay off as well.
And you had such a brilliant first round, even though, as you say, it wasn't even your A game. But you get a couple of birdies early on, and I saw in an interview you did earlier this week about how, you see your name up on the scoreboard. And, do you have to sort of pinch yourself when you see Garvey up on the scoreboard at the US Open?
Yeah, it was a bit weird. So what I'd said was on earlier that week on the Monday, I kind of took a photo in front of it and edited my name, at the top of it, as a joke. So walking down, it was my 9th hole, and seeing my name there, we talked about this, my psychologist, John Quinn, and I, that could have happened. I could be leading after the first round. So he was like, at the end of the day, just don't ignore it, enjoy it, relish it. It's your first major championship. So, me and my caddy had a bit of a laugh walking down the 9th hole. Didn't ignore it. Obviously, my name was up there, and with, girls that I've looked up to my whole life. So just, be in the moment and let yourself enjoy that rather than, let it get to you, I guess. So yeah, it was pretty cool to see my name up there for sure.
Yeah, obviously, I mean, I'm fortunate to miss the cut, and that triple bogey late in the second round was a big part of that. What do you think happened later in that second round that caused that?
Yeah, we just reviewed it last night. Obviously, let myself sort of simmer down a little bit. It was a tough one to take for sure. But yeah, I talked to my caddy on the 13th hole that day about how I just wasn't feeling, much of my swing. We'd managed ourselves well the whole day, just picking really big targets, centre of greens, and just leaving myself sort of 40, 50 footers for birdie and just trying to scramble par. And we'd done really well to, get through 13 holes. I think I was one over, and then I actually made my first birdie on 14 where I hold one of these long 40 footers, and I said to him, I guess today's just about patience. And then obviously 15 hit, and I had a wee 3-putt on 15, and then had about a 10-minute wait on the 16th tee, which is probably one of the most daunting shots on the golf course. You've got water left, right, and long, and then just after looking back at it, my head was there. It wasn't anything to do with nerves or anything like that. I just didn't put a good swing on it, and it was a bad swing at the wrong time, and it always seems to fall that way when you miss a cut by one shot or something like that. But yeah, I think what we've learned from it is just that I need to figure out a shot that I can go to under pressure, or when my swing isn't quite there, that I know is going to be reliable. So that's going to be something I'm going to work towards the next few months, and hopefully have in the bag come when, this tournament might be, for a paycheck, and I haven't just, lost maybe. I think one of my friends did the same as me. She shot 2 under, then 7 over yesterday. She told me she probably lost about 100 grand. So that made me feel a little bit better. Yeah.
So this experience must really fuel the fire to go out and compete again at other major golf tournaments down the line, though.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's really just made me realise that I can also win out here as well, which gives me a lot of confidence to when I turn pro, and I know that it's just a matter of time. I've definitely got the game. It's just taking these learnings as they come and seeing them as opportunities to grow and get better. But I know that my name will hopefully be on the top of that leaderboard one day.
And you spoke and played a practice round with Lydia Ko, who's been on the top of a few leaderboards in her time. How insightful and helpful was that?
Oh, it was awesome. I think, the biggest thing from playing with her on Wednesday was just, seeing where my game was at compared to hers. And she's in great form right now. I kind of told everyone after playing with her that she's really got a good chance of winning this week, and she's only 4 shots back going into today. And with this weather, I think anything can happen. I wouldn't be surprised if she comes home with the win today. So yeah, just always an amazing experience to be alongside a world-class player like her. And it was just myself and her playing the practice round, so I got to ask her a few questions and just sit back and sort of observe and watch how one of the best in the world goes about preparing for the biggest tournament of the year.
So what's next for you? What's the timeline for you to turn pro?
So I graduate from school in May of next year. So I've got that to tick off and get school done. And then Q school falls around August at the end of every year. So it goes through from August to about December. So I'm planning on playing that next year to try and get onto the LPGA. So it's been a long time coming, I feel like. I've been an amateur, I've been playing for a while now, so I'm really looking forward to that and giving it a good run.
And so what are you studying at school?
Communications. Yeah.
And you're away from family and away for your first Christmas, I understand, this year?
Yeah. So it's gonna, it's a little tough, but I've got plenty of friends over here, and I'm gonna spend time with them over the holidays. So I'm sure, there'll be a FaceTime Christmas morning, but after that, I'll be sweet.
Did you have a nice chance to speak to family after playing at the tournament this weekend?
Yeah, for sure. They're always the first ones I ring up, and it was nice to sort of have a little cry with my parents after coming off the round there. But all the messages I got were overwhelmingly nice and supportive about how proud everyone was of me. And it's just, obviously you're disappointed in yourself, but you just got to look at bigger and better things to come.
Yeah, well, we look forward to following you as you chase those bigger and better things. Thanks very much for coming on today.
Thanks, Simon. Cheers.
All right, Amelia Garvey there. Terrific to see so much more young golfing talent coming through, and I'm sure we'll see a lot of Amelia in the years to come. Well, the European Rugby season is back underway, and as always, there's a numerous number of Kiwis sprinkled throughout. Stephen Luatua's Bristol side have made a strong start. They're 2-1 after 3 games in the English Premiership. Well, not so smooth sailing for Chris Boyd up at Northampton. They're 0-3 and holding up the foot of the ladder, despite, of course, having All Black great Owen Franks in their ranks. Well, Chris Jones is the rugby correspondent for the BBC, and just after getting home from watching Bristol lose to Clermont in the European Cup, he joined me on Kiwis Abroad, and I started by asking him just how COVID has affected the schedule for this year's European rugby season.
Yeah, I mean, there's been loads of different repercussions, not just the fact that pretty much everywhere in the Northern Hemisphere we've got no crowds, or in certain areas there are crowds allowed of up to 2,000. So, in the UK, for example, different areas are in different tiers, and if you're in tier 2, you can have 2,000, but if you're in tier 3, you can't have any. So I was at a game today, Bristol against Clermont-Auvergne, which was behind closed doors. So that's the kind of real tangible impact which we've seen ever since March, haven't we? Even though there are a few supporters coming back in drips and drabs, which is obviously great. And then the whole kind of structure of European rugby's had to be reshaped this season, because the French top 14 season was called, whereas the Premiership and the finished to its conclusion. The Pro 14 had a kind of adapted season, but they still finished with a champion. The top 14 was scrapped, in which case they had to slightly change the European Cup. Instead of 20 teams, we're now at 24. Instead of 5 pools of 4 teams, we're now at 2 pools of 12 teams. Only 4 matches in the group stages rather than 6. Not everyone plays each other in the 12-team pool. A lot of changes, but I've just been at a great game today in terms of in Bristol Clermont. So we're still seeing some decent rugby, albeit in very different circumstances to usual.
Yeah, and just on that Bristol team, they've made a pretty strong start to the season. 2 wins from 3 games in the Premiership, coached, of course, by Pat Lam and captained by Stephen Luatua. Have you liked what you've seen from them early on this season?
They're a great team to watch. They won the Challenge Cup with a great win in France against Toulon. That was in the last season's European Cup, but only in October. We're turning around so quickly, aren't we, from season to season? Took a bit of a hammering today against Clermont, but that's a Clermont side with just a ludicrous amount of quality. French internationals in Damien Penaud, Alberti Raka on the wings. Kotaro Matsushima, one of the stars of the World Cup, Japanese player. He was awesome, scored a hat-trick. Bristol without Stephen Luatua, I think should be back quite soon. He's just been inspirational for them. Going back 3 or 4 seasons now, he actually joined them playing in the 2nd tier. And whenever he plays, I think they're a transformed side. So they need him back pretty quick. Semi Radradra is missing through injury as well. They're a great team to watch, Bristol, and it was a fun game. But yeah, Clermont in the end did too much because they stormed out the blocks and were 20-odd points up before we'd started.
Our viewers back home are always interested to see how All Blacks go or New Zealanders go playing in the Northern Hemisphere. Have there been any standouts this season from Kiwis playing in the Premiership?
You know what? A couple of my favourite Kiwis over here are injured at the moment. We mentioned Luatua, who's been awesome for Bristol, and a guy who I thought was completely instrumental in taking Wasps from a kind of bottom half side to Premiership finalists was Malachi Fekitoa. Whether it was the hard pitches with the rugby being played kind of through the summer here, whether it was just him getting more accustomed to Wasps and their systems, but he was phenomenal. Such a shame that he picked up a groin injury at the end of last season. I think he's now had shoulder surgery as well, so he's out for a little bit. So that my two standouts, less so this season, which is only a couple of weeks old, but over the course of like the sort of the 2020 post-pandemic or post-lockdown, Stephen Luatua is always a favourite. Malachi Fekitoa. John Afoa has been a great signing for Bristol. He's often been keeping Carl Sinclair, who's an English superstar, out the starting team. He was playing for Bristol today, and it's been such a hero of Bristol, but also Gloucester Rugby, Ulster Rugby as well. Since leaving New Zealand, he's been awesome. And then some guys, you keep an eye on, but haven't, Lima Sopoaga's had a difficult season or so at Wasps. He actually has been playing at fullback today, and Jacob Umaga has been wearing that 10 jersey for Wasps in the big games. Charlie Atkinson, a young guy, was playing at 10. So it's been a bit of a mixed bag, but certainly the likes of Fekitoa and Luatua, when they get back fit, they're going to transform their sides.
I was going to ask about Lima Sopoaga in particular, because he has had a sort of a tough time. He came over to England in his prime. I think he was 26 or 27. Obviously a big name. He was, a regular in the All Blacks, though he missed the 2015 World Cup squad. Have we seen improvements in his performance over the years, or has it been a difficult time throughout?
It's been a difficult time throughout, I think. I don't know how it's tough to come over and settle. I don't think anyone appreciates how tough it is. Or, us guys in the media, we probably think these guys can hit the ground running easier than they can, given your changing hemispheres, lifestyle, weather, family, settling and all that. So he struggled to really make an impact, especially given he was replacing Danny Cipriani, who was a key figure for Wasps and, almost took them to the Premiership title a few years ago. I still think Sopoaga's got a load to offer, and I think the Wasps players are still massively benefiting from having him in and around the setup. The fact he's playing fullback and not running the show at fly half does give an indication how it's not quite worked out for him. But having said all that, he produced a moment of magic in the Premiership final. I don't know if you guys watched it. Filthy weather. Exeter kick to the corner. He comes from 5 or 10 meters off the pitch, catches it midair, takes it onto the field so he doesn't concede the line out, kicks it downfield, chases up, tackles, wins, and then Wasps get a turnover and get back in the game. Or I think he got close to drawing it. So he's done some amazing moments, but then last weekend against Newcastle throws a bad pass, Newcastle in for an intercept. So you feel it might be coming, but it just, the fact that he's not playing regularly at 10. Jacob Umaga, who's a young guy, has been owning that shirt. I still think he's an asset to the Wasps dressing room. Of course he's world class, but it just he hasn't quite kind of dominated in a sort of number 10 role like some Kiwis have in the past. Like Jimmy Gopperth has just been a force of nature in this league. And obviously guys like Nick Evans have a great legacy at clubs as well.
I was going to touch on Jimmy Gopperth, his teammate, because there's a guy who never played for the All Blacks and was probably an under-the-radar signing, but has performed really well, and I think is rated one of the better imports that have come to England from New Zealand. Is it easier for those guys that there's fewer expectations on them compared to guys like Sopoaga, who come over having been regulars in the All Blacks and have quite a lot of expectation on them?
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. I think Sopoaga, because he, as you said earlier, Simon, he was one of the first All Blacks to come in his prime. We often have seen All Blacks coming towards the end of their careers or when they've fallen out of the All Black setup. But to come slap bang in his prime was a huge signing for us and does bring with it a level of expectation. And it does take time. Someone like Gopperth, I mean, yeah, you mentioned how he's not played for the All Blacks, but he just has been getting better. When he was at Newcastle and even at Leinster, I think he had a reputation of being a solid player, but not an inspirational, world-class creative player. The last few seasons for Wasps, he's been out of this world. Season before last, I think it was, he won all the awards, scooped a lot, Players Player, Premiership Player of the Season. He has been, and even last season at 37, I think he is now, he's a couple of months older than his coach, Lee Blackett. That gives you an idea of his longevity. And he's had his, he's one of those players who's had very few injury problems until quite recently, which picked up, some niggles here and there and had one long-term injury, came back, got injured again. But, he's playing at 12 today for Wasps. I don't know if this will be his last season, but whether it's Newcastle, Leinster, or Wasps, he's just been an absolutely outstanding addition to those clubs, and he's playing as well as he ever has at Wasps, even at his age.
I was going to touch on Northampton as well, because they've got Chris Boyd, a Kiwi, coaching or as their director of rugby. They've also got Owen Franks, who was a much celebrated All Black who came over there. Chris Boyd mentioned that Owen Franks has been struggling a little bit to adapt to playing in the Premiership, but was perhaps seeing some slowly improved performances. What have you seen from Owen Franks playing for Northampton?
Yeah, I think he's been struggling, it's surprising, isn't it? Given that even if you're talking about a different league and different refereeing interpretations, different emphasis on the set piece, you've still got a World Cup winning All Black who's been there and done it at the highest level, and scrummed against the best in the world, the British and Irish Lions and all that. So it might just be a similar situation to Sopoaga. I think he's, I've not heard anything negative around Northampton in terms of his influence. I think that's only been positive. But if you're playing in a Northampton pack that, is a little bit underpowered compared to where it was in recent years, and Chris Boyd has made a big impact on English rugby last season and brought through some players like Fraser Dingwall and George Furbank and James Grayson and got Northampton playing an excellent style, but you still feel Northampton can be got at physically. And when Boyd came in, he was noticeably taken aback by the emphasis here on the set piece, and not just scrumming to get the ball in, get the ball out and launch an attack, but actually scrumming to win penalties. So I think maybe Boyd and Franks are still taking time to get used to the way the game is officiated and played up here in terms of that emphasis on set piece.
Yeah, and at 0-3 this season, is Chris Boyd under a bit of pressure at Northampton?
Yeah, interesting one, because he was this time last season, or just before the lockdown, Northampton were flying. In his first season, having had very little time in terms of pre-season, he took them to a Premiership semi-final and a European quarter-final, and then they were going pretty great guns before March, before the restart, and we thought, okay, this could be Northampton really hitting the ground running. But ever since the pandemic, I don't know what's happened there. He tried a selection policy because there were so many games in close proximity, midweek games and everything. Most directors of rugby played A team, then a B team, then an A team, then a B team. Boyd mixed and matched his A and B team for sort of 4 games. Instead of getting 2 wins, 2 losses like everyone else did, he got four losses. So you kind of feel he had the right idea. You admire what he did because he didn't want mismatches. No one wants mismatches, but other clubs were prepared to drop a game to then win one. And in the end, he would have 2 tight losses. So it just feels as if he said today after they lost, or said last night after they lost to Bordeaux in a close game, we're finding new ways to lose. They're just in a bit of a rut, but this was going to be his last year. He's signed 1 more year. I still think his influence on English rugby has been positive in terms of the style he's bringing, the players he's brought through, the emphasis on youth. But it's the same old things in English rugby. It's a tough old league. It's attritional. It's set piece orientated. Some teams like to play, some teams don't. But at the heart of it is really physical attritional rugby. And you feel if Northampton's game is all about playing into space and all about playing fast and loose, they've occasionally got unstuck. Well, that's worked fine for Bristol, so it's not like you have to play a certain way up here. It's just they seem to have a bit of a crisis of confidence at Northampton, which is a real turnaround from the first sort of year and a half of Boyd's regime.
Chris Jones out of the BBC there. Always interesting to hear how the Kiwis are getting on in the Northern Hemisphere. Of course, plenty of interest in Japan as well, especially with Bowden Barrett and TJ Perenara set to lace up over there in the top league, which kicks off in early January. All right, that wraps up another episode of Kiwis Abroad. Thanks, as always, for tuning in. I'll be back on Sunday night with a fresh episode. Until then, take care, stay healthy.